Welcome to the ReUp Men's Podcast with Tim Brown. I'm Brandon Porter. ReUp is here to help you be the man God desires for you to be. In fact, it's who He created you to be. We're glad that you're here. Learn more about ReUp at our website, reupmen.com, or you can go to reuppodcast.com. Tim, you spent a lifetime and still are working outside of the church for your vocation. You are a working man, and probably the majority of the guys who are listening to this podcast don't serve in a local church as a pastor or staff member. They work in some kind of a vocational, secular job. But needless to say, God desires for them to be a witness for Jesus, even there in the workplace. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. If you're a Jesus follower, you are automatically a evangelist, missionary, all those good church words we can come up with. Really, you are the representation of Jesus. Display his invisible attributes and all that. You may be the only Jesus to some of the people you work with that they'll ever know or see, or the only Bible, the only church, whatever you want to say. So no doubt, that's the biggest mission field out there. And I really think it's cool that the Lord, he doesn't need us for anything, but the fact that he gives us the opportunity and the responsibility and the joy of being his representative out there in the workplace. And so, and that uh, we have the awesome privilege of being a part of his purpose and his plan. And so, yeah, whoever you are listening, wherever you're at right now, that's where you're there for a reason. And understanding that does kind of change the way you view your vocation. You to look at it through his eyes, and I've always thought that's just pretty cool that we get to be those people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of things there, and these are things that we've talked about. I've heard you talk about to other men. I've heard you talk about it in presentations. I'm gonna break it down. One of the things that you said just a minute ago is about displaying the attributes of God through the work that you do in the workplace. Talk a little bit about that. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, obviously we have Christ in us, in the man journey. One of the truths we try to get men to learn is how to live by the life of another that's in you, Jesus. What the verse, Christ in me, the hope and glory. There's all kinds of other verses talking about Christ in us. So as we live by his life and he lives his life through us, people see his attributes. Well, what are his, they're invisible really, because he's an invisible being, for lack of a better term, although he's real. But the way he would react to a situation, well, that's displayed through us. How he would show compassion and is displayed through us. His character, is displayed through us. And so, yeah, so that when I say that, and I use that term a lot, you're right. We have the privilege of his displaying his invisible attributes, people seeing him through us. So basically, if you took the attributes of a person, whatever those are, positive, which all Jesus's are all positive. There's nothing evil or negative about his attributes. And so if you took a person, and it's basically like they're living those out, but you can't see that person. There was movies years ago called The Invisible Man, and all that, where you know they'd have conversations with this invisible person, or he would move things around in a room or whatever, but so you knew there were something being displayed, but you couldn't see who was doing it. And so, but through us, those attributes are displayed. And yeah, and I use a term that Bob used to always use with me, is that, when we really understand, for example, these man journey truths, we look different, we respond different, things about us are noticeable that separate us from other people. And that causes people to want what we've got, because they can see or recognize something that looks different than everybody else in the room. And they're not sure but they recognize that. So that's those invisible attributes of his. You know, everybody else in the room's telling a, dirty joke, or they're looking at something on the internet they shouldn't be looking at, and you don't participate in that. That's his attributes coming through you, because in our flesh, we're not programmed to do that. We're gonna do what everybody else does. But when you step away from that, that's an attribute. That's one of his attributes that's being displayed through you. So I think, I mean, I could give example after example, but I think if you're listening, and you're not really sure what I mean by his invisible attribute, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a picture.
Well, that just naturally leads us then, I think, to the next step of this conversation, which is there are times when you speak. So there are times when you act and through your character, you reflect the attributes of God. And then there are other times, and this is something I've heard you speak about a number of times, is folks are going to see that. They're going to know that you're a Christian. They're going to know there's something different, and something's going to happen in their life, whether it's personal or they're at work, and they need someone to talk to, and there's the opportunity for you to speak about your faith.
Yeah, absolutely. We've all probably been in a situation where we maybe something like that or whatever, and we spoke some words to somebody, and then after the conversation's over, you kind of step away and go, "Where did that come from?" I mean, well, that was him. So, but again, yeah, it's not just your actions. I mean, your words. I mean, let's go back to what Jesus said in John 14:15 when he talks about, "My works are not my own. You see me, you see the Father." He says, "My words are not my own." Well, they were the Father in him. They were his words. So
Mhm,
that's again, that's that visual of his attributes even coming out through when we speak, and we, again, we will give advice or share some comforting words or whatever that are maybe uh, a little more hopeful, cause people to
mhm,
lean in a little bit. When we talk about, we get around to our faith and why we can speak this way, why we can act this way. And people are like, well, okay, and can you tell me more? And then that gives you the opportunity to share your faith and do those kind of things. Kind of back to that statement again with Bob, people will want what you got. As you speak differently, they'll, they'll lean in and go, okay, how, where's that wisdom come from? How can you look at it that way? How can you say that? Well, it's because I have Jesus in me. And the reason I have him in me is like, he came to live in me when I gave my life to him. He became my savior. And my life's not perfect, but man, with Jesus in it, I've always got hope. And he'll never leave me. He'll never forsake me.
mhm.
So again, it allows you to just go down a road with your faith and all that. Yeah, but even in speaking, those attributes are displayed as well.
Yeah. So certainly there are times where that just sort of happens naturally, and we've not done anything to draw that attention to ourselves. But on the other hand, as witnesses of Jesus, sent out to be witnesses of Jesus, what are some intentional things maybe you've done over the years that, were subtle, that weren't just direct and in someone's face, but were subtle so that people would know this is who I am, this is what defines me, this is what shapes my priorities and my values?
That's a great question. I've had this conversation numerous times with people that came in. Yeah, I'm at my workplace, and I want that to happen. How do I start those conversations? What do I do? Some intentionality and all that. I've really thought over the years, what I used to do a lot of for a vocation. I really don't do it much anymore. But when I was out selling clothes, I would have the opportunity to call on individual men one on one in their office, in their setting, in their life. And, I sold them custom clothing and all that. So it was just amazing how naturally guys would open up and talk to me about things. I was one on one, nobody else in the room. I could get into a lot of things there. I mean, I recognized men didn't have friends and all. I mean, it just, that setting taught me so much that really was some of the foundation stuff early on for why we started ReUp.
Mhm,
But, so as guys would share and talk about things, one of the easy things was always, hey, again, it was easier for me because we were one on one, we were behind closed doors, but you could still do this in a bigger setting, if there were more people around, as guys would share, I'd say, man, I hate you're going through that, or that's happened or whatever. Hey, could we take a minute and let me just pray for you right now? A lot of guys would just, that didn't have faith or whatever. I mean, they would pause a minute, but I never, ever, 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 ever had a guy say no. No, I don't think I want you to pray for me. Instead of saying, oh man, I hate that. I'll be praying about that. No, I mean, you can do that, but man, I really saw being intentional, stopping right there and going, hey, would you care right now, just for a minute, if I just prayed about that with you right now? And lots of times be sitting across from them. I'd get up, come around the other side of their desk, maybe put my hand on their shoulder or whatever, and I'd just take a couple minutes and pray for them. And what was neat about that is so many times over the years after I did that, when these guys had other things going on in their life and I wasn't even calling on them, seeing them, they would reach out to me and say, hey, I just want you to know I'm going through some things right now. Would you care to pray for me? And so that was obviously a simple thing, but I learned many years ago from a guy is, don't just tell them I'll be praying about that. No, be intentional right then. If you really want to impact them at that moment with your faith, just say, hey man, would you care if we just took a minute right now and prayed about that? So that's obviously one way to be very intentional
Yeah.
with it. And then, another thing I've used over the years, and these are things I've learned from other people. Not obviously I've had to rely on that, which is fine. But I would, in a same type of situation, we'd be having a conversation, and I would just throw in there, hey, I don't know what you think about Jesus, but man, I've found myself when I've gone through some of the stuff you're going through, because I have a relationship with him, it's just been amazing how much better I can handle some of these situations and the wisdom that I'm able to gain because I have a relationship with Jesus. Now, you're not making him uncomfortable. You're just telling them, you're making a statement, you're telling a fact, and then how they respond to that. And most of the time, guys, a lot of times the guys would go, well, they automatically go, well, I used to go to church some when I was a kid, and, you know, but then we start these conversations. It just starts, and then they share, well, I had a bad experience as an adult at church. I used to go as a kid, and I hadn't been to church in years, and well, now we're in a conversation, and I'm able to share more and talk more. So I think two things. I mean, we could spend another hour probably talking about this, just two things right off the top of my head I would tell somebody if you want to be intentional is just ask somebody if you can pray for them right then, and then just always ask them, hey, um, you know, what's your thoughts about Jesus? Have you ever had considered a relationship with Jesus, or just say, hey man, I've been there. I know what you're going through. Here's how Jesus in my life has helped me. So however you want to approach that. So I think that's two things: get to the person of Jesus and tell him you'll pray for him, and pray for him right then.
Yeah.
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 That's a good word. I think it's being intentional, looking for those opportunities. Maybe not intentional to get in their face or to,
Right.
sort of be this stereotypical Christian, but intentional to recognize when that moment presents itself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's amazing. I think if we could stand beside God and watch a recording of our life, and he would, and as that recording was playing, the video was playing, he had gone ahead and made some marks on the video of divine opportunities in your life, and he played it back, and he all of a sudden they'd just be scrolling by, and there'd be all these little marks of all these divine opportunities he gave us. And so we just need to be aware of it. We need to be a little more intentional to pay attention. And then when those things happen, take advantage of it and be intentional. Now it's not up to us to change that person's life. It's not up to us to save them or whatever. I mean, he's the only one that can do that, but he does give us lots of opportunities. And again, I think that's so cool that he does that he's allowed us to participate in that. I mean, when he saves us, he could just pull us right out and bring us to heaven if he wanted to, but he wants us to be a part of what he's doing, and he doesn't need us and all that. He just wants us to have that joy and to participate. And so I think we have to constantly remind ourselves of that that's really why we're here, because again, he could have just pulled us out and taken us home to be with him, but he's left us here to enjoy him and to let other people know about him. And I think when we recognize that, and then we're intentional when those opportunities come up every day or weekly or whatever, we see them and we don't miss out on it. And boy, the joy that can come from some of that. I mean, I've left some of these guys' offices or homes after having some conversations, praying, and just felt so much joy that the Lord had allowed me to be just a small part of maybe impacting this guy somehow, where the Lord could then do something really cool. Yeah, it's an opportunity and a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we want you to share in that joy. We want you to know that, to be able to, be a relational witness for Jesus there in your workplace. And ReUp is here to help you with that. You can find resources by going to our website, reuppodcast.com. Know that we're here to help. You can find a way to reach out to us if you'll go to that site. Again, it's reuppodcast.com. Hey, make sure to share this podcast if you will. Maybe you've got buddies in the workplace who are believers and you all have been talking about wanting to share your faith. This would be something good to share with them, and you all can talk about it, maybe over lunch or a break or something like that. And it'll help you to be a witness for Jesus there where you are. So make sure to share it, and then we'd love for you to subscribe at your favorite podcast platform. Thanks so much for listening to the ReUp Men's Podcast with Tim Brown.